Damn, I was in that shit, man. I never had no dope like that before in my life, man. That's the heaviest shit I ever smoked, man. I mean, I smoked a lot of shit before, man. But goddamn, man, that's heavy shit. They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no.
129 people die every day in this country from a drug overdose.
Host Holly and various guests discuss the important topics about addiction and recovery. They are not quote-unquote experts, but just real people telling real stories. Any or no addictions are welcome. Recovery Talk starts now.
Hey, thank you for listening to Recovery Talk today. I'm your host, Holly. I have a really cool guest today, and I'm super excited. And if you haven't already, give us a like on Facebook for any updates and upcoming shows, and you can subscribe to us on Spreaker as well. We appreciate your support to make the show possible. And if you're interested in sharing your story, please message me at recoverytalkpodcast@gmail.com. My guest today is Alexis Johnson. From heroin and prison to Playboy Vogue, this 34-year-old model is the perfect example that anyone addicted to drugs or alcohol can get their life back on track. She is one of the hottest up-and-coming fitness models today. She shares her story to empower change in the recovery community, that you too can do anything you put your mind to. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Oh, of course. I'm excited to talk to you and just kind of get to know your story. I just love empowering women in recovery.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited too. I was really honored when you reached out and asked me to be on your show. So thank you for that.
Aw, that's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you just want to get started, if you just want to tell us a little bit about your background, kind of before recovery and how your life is now.
Yeah, I can certainly. I will have 3 years clean from drugs and 9 years sober from alcohol.
Wow.
And thank you.
Congratulations.
It's been, thank you. I was one of those people that they said would never get clean. And, I had an amazing childhood. My father was an alcoholic, a couple of bars, a used car lot. We owned racehorses growing up, so I spent a lot of my childhood with him at the car lot or, in the back room of his bar or at the racetrack with jockeys and stuff like that. So I was around older men my whole life. And I didn't really have a lot of friends growing up. And I learned how to manipulate people growing up as a child. And because my father wasn't technically around, my parents split up when I was 9. So I went to live with my mom, the disciplinarian. So I harbored a lot of resentments against her, and, whenever she said no, Dad would say yes, and I was always Daddy's little girl. So I gained the sense of entitlement with my father, and that definitely a lot with my addiction growing up, because I gained this perfectionistic attitude. The world owes me everything, and don't you know who I am, and all this stuff growing up that my father ended up being my biggest enabler as a parent. But I also have to put in the story that my mom was 42 and my dad was 50 when I was born. So when it came into the drug scene, they didn't really know how to handle it. When they found out that I was using crack cocaine and opioids and heroin, they didn't understand it. They didn't know how to deal with it. So things that my father did when I was in active addiction, he thought he was doing it to help save me, and in the long run, it ended up enabling me and definitely furthered my addiction. I graduated high school, top 5 of my high school class, and I had full scholarships to colleges. I graduated a virgin. I didn't drink. I didn't touch a drug.
Oh, wow.
I excelled at, I was like your opposite of normally. I excelled at everything I did. And I think a big part of that was after years of counseling, my counselors and I have discovered that I think the more to be the best at everything, it was kind of attention seeking for my father to make him spend more time with me, because the only time we really spent together was at the racetrack. And, I just wanted him to constantly tell me he was proud of me and that he loved me, but that wasn't the relationship that we had. So, if I got like a 3.99 on something and my GPA should have been a 4.0, like I was the person that would lock myself in my room and cry. I have a type A personality, 0 to 100, black and white, all or nothing. And I've learned to embrace it. I used to fight that, and it would make me miserable. And my counselor that I had at the Salvation Army was like, Lex, that's just who you are, so just learn how to deal with it. And I have, through 3 years of recovery, I've learned to deal with how to work with that and mold that into my recovery. To me, my story, my whole entire 15 years of addiction short, I ended up getting 3 DUIs by the time I was 7.
What age was it?
I'm sorry?
Oh, what age did you say? It was just kind of breaking up a little bit.
No, that's okay. I started drinking at 17 when I was in college, and I had my first DUI three months later.
Oh.
So in the whole realm of my addiction, which spanned 15 years, I had 3 DUIs by the time I was 12 years old. And I had 7 overdoses. I have flatlined twice. My opioid use started with a car accident that in 2008, I was rushing to get back from a weekend trip in the Hamptons to get to work, and my car, I hydroplaned on Interstate 80, and when I did, I got catapulted into a guardrail backwards doing about 60 miles an hour. The whole back end of my car was totaled, and about 2 weeks later, my sister Cheryl Ann passed away from cancer. She was 50. And that started doctor-prescribed medication with Percocet and Xanax. So that's where my trip down that whole pathway started. In college, I was an ecstasy and a cocaine girl. I didn't know about heroin. I didn't know about, addiction in terms of that. I was your party girl. I was your upper. I was your drinker. And I stayed away from all your hardcore drugs in terms of your crack and your heroin. And so my trip started with the car accident and my sister's death. From 2008 until 2012, I overdosed. My father found me dead on the floor in December of 2010. I had been doctor shopping because I don't look like your typical drug addict that society stigmatizes a drug addict to look like. It was very easy for me to go to a doctor or a pain management doctor and get painkillers. There was one point I was getting over 600 painkillers a month prescribed to me between hospital ER visits and pain management doctors and family doctors. And I learned how to manipulate, physicians to get what I wanted. So when the painkillers stopped working and the prices of those started going up, heroin had started moving into our town. And that's how I got introduced to heroin. And I would never shoot it. I did. I started off with sniffing like everybody else in my hometown. And, there was a bunch of us that had started together, and we had all graduated to shooting heroin. And of the 4 of us that originally started, only 2 of us are left. My best friend, Katie, passed away in 2011 from a heroin overdose. And my ex-fiance, Brian, just passed away 4 months ago, back in February.
Sorry to hear that.
So he was a big, thank you. He was a big part of my story. We were together from 2008 until 2011, and we were engaged. And he was the first guy that I ever used heroin with. We shot up together. That one really hit home because, they say you have to forgive yourself and move on. But unless you're in my shoes and you've lived that part, it's very hard to be the one that's still breathing and have that part of your life that's gone. You know, and although we haven't been together for 7 years, we still talked. And, you know, he had made recovery. He was doing well, and, you know, he slipped. And I had a major relapse in 2014. I had to have a hysterectomy. I overdosed twice in 4 hours on Good Friday in 2012, and I actually flatlined in the back of a cop car. I had a bottle of pills slid down my pants, and I knew I was going back to prison. I got a third DUI in 2009 with Brian. We were coming back. I was on probation from that DUI. And an addict's mentality is that if you're in trouble and, you know, you're going back to jail, or for most of us, you know, if you're going to rehab, you're going to go back as high as you can go or as drunk as you can go, because it's that one last time. And I'm in the back of a cop car, and my hands were handcuffed in front, not behind. And I had the pill bottle in front of me, so I opened the bottle and I swallowed the bottle of pills. And I flatlined in the back of the car. And the officer and I are very close friends now. And he said, "Lex, we had to bring you back with shots of narcotin to your jugular." And he's like, "I've never seen anything like it." I visited 2 separate hospitals in 4 hours. And I went to state prison that time, and I spent almost 6 months in jail between county and prison. And I got out. I put 2.5 years sober and recovered with my life. And you know, I got a good job working for a local dealership. I was selling Fords right out the gate. I was making $90,000 a year selling cars, and I was really good at it. My dad and I bought a racehorse together, and, you know, things were just really well. And I was having complications, some female problems, and my gynecologist said, "You know, I think we can either go ahead with the surgery or you're going to continue to have these issues." And they were major issues, and I've had a lot of, you know, I lost a brother and a sister to cancer. So we went ahead with the hysterectomy on October 14th of 2014, and that caused my relapse from the painkillers. And she knew I was in recovery, but the thing is that a doctor cannot judge your pain, and I don't hold any doctor accountable because I manipulated all of them. You know, I have to take responsibility for my part in it. And I knew what to say. I knew how to act in pain. I knew how to, you know, how to gauge and do exactly what I needed to do to get these painkillers. And when she said, "We're going to send you home with 20 Percocet," I didn't object. I could have said no, and I didn't, you know, so that relapse is on me. And when I share my story, you know, I respected those painkillers for 3 weeks. I took them as prescribed. I only took them when I thought I needed them, and they scared me. After I finished the script, I was so petrified because the obsession started coming back, and I didn't reach for help. And as a woman, after having that surgery at 32 years old, I felt damaged, and I started getting into this victim mentality, is that no man would ever want to marry me, and I was damaged goods, and I couldn't provide children, and I was going to be alone forever, and I felt hollow inside, and I used that as an excuse relapse. And in December of that year, I walked out of the gym, and I called my crack dealer, and I went on a full-blown 7-month relapse, which led me to shooting 50 bags of heroin a day. I was smoking an 8-ball of crack a day. I went through $60,000 from the end of December until July. I overdosed 3 more times. I had a crack seizure. I overdosed on Easter Sunday. I took a knife to my face, an X-Acto knife to my face to shreds. I was up on a 4-day crack binge. Went to town on my face. You know, my father didn't know where I was. I'd be gone to New York for days on end. He was going through heart surgeries at the time, and I just didn't care. I was doing such an insane amount of drugs because I was trying to put myself 6 feet under without actually taking my life. And on July 13th of 2015, my probation officer knocked down my door and arrested me right out of my bed. And that is my sobriety date. and I went to the Salvation Army program in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So between jail and the rehab program, I did 14 months straight, and that's a program that saved my life. I completely surrendered my will, my life over. It's a spiritual program. It's a work therapy program. I just knew I either was going to take my life or I had to try something different. So July 13th, like I said, I'll have 3 years clean off drugs. July 3rd will be 9 years from alcohol. And, you know, I do things like this to share my story. I've worked the steps. I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't really go to meetings because I was court ordered to 2 meetings for 8 years straight. So a little burnout. I do have to. And I have a sponsor, and I do sponsor women, and I take them through the book. And I found a cocktail of what works for me. You know, and without having to be forced to do something, I finally found a remedy of what keeps me sober. And, you know, I get up every morning and I hit my knees and I pray and I read my Jesus Calling book. And at night I thank God. You know, I do a 10-step every night to make sure I didn't hurt anybody. But, you know, I know the tools that are out there, and I don't have anybody in my life that is actively using unless it's somebody that reaches for help or that needs treatment or something like that. I have resources to direct them to get them help. But for me, you know, it's the days that I remember rolling up my dirty underwear and using it as a pillow in county prison, or waking up in state prison with no felonies, just being a drug addict and not being able to get the help that you need, just not knowing how you got there, you know. And today my dad just turned 86 on June 8th, and he can, like, finally rest his head at night knowing that I'm okay, you know. And I've survived a 7-year eating disorder, binge eating disorder, where I would purge afterwards, and body dysmorphia, and I suffer from bipolar, where they can't figure out the right medication. And some days I wake up and I want to die, and some days I wake up and I throw suicide fundraisers. You know, it's a complete up and down roller coaster. But what I've learned through counseling and my sponsor is that I just have to slow it down and, you know, work 24 hours a day. And that's true for all areas of my life, not just recovery. Mm-hmm. You know, and I've been blessed, and I've been lucky enough to be able to carry my message, because it's not about me. You know, it's about showing people that they can do it too. I literally started from nothing, and I just made the biggest magazine in the world. You know, these are things like achieving dreams too, because once we get sober, we don't have to stay in that recovery only mindset. Like, there's a whole world of things. You could travel, you can go back and get your degree. We can, you know, as long as you keep your recovery first and foremost, there's nothing in this world you can't do. And, you know, I've seen moms going back to college in their 50s, and, you know, people going out of their comfort zone and doing things they didn't think possible. And, you know, it's a beautiful life when we get sober. And that's what I'm grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like now today that we can have goals and dreams, something that we didn't know was even possible.
Right.
When we were using
right. It's like I'm writing my book now, and it's set to be out in October. It's called A Beautiful Nightmare. And in it, I talk about snapshots and snippets of my life, because there's a good portion of my life I don't remember. And it feels like I went to sleep at 17 and woke up at 32. Like, mm-hmm. That is the best way I can describe my adult life, because I remember parts of it. But if you wanted me to sit down and actually tell you, you know, my 20s, I couldn't. I couldn't. And that's sad, because when most people are starting to, you know, hit their stride and learning adult things, I didn't learn how to do adult things and get sober until I was 32. And it's like a smack in the face, because it's like, oh crap, like I have to do all these things that my parents were trying to teach me how to do. And, you know, when people are learning how to live on their own, I'm in a rehab program trying to figure out what it's like to pay bills and do all this stuff when people have been doing this for years, and it's overwhelming. And then you have all these feelings, and then you get guilt, and And then you get all this crap that we did for 15 years, and it's like, oh my God, then you have to stay sober on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's a roller coaster. And, you know, for anybody who's out there trying to get one more day, I mean, I think recovery is seriously a badass thing because not many people can do it. I think the statistics, if I remember correctly, are like 0.5% get sober and stay sober without a relapse.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary, you know, especially with the drugs that are out there right now. And, you know, the heroin that I was using back in 2010 is not the heroin that's on the streets now. And it's just like when I speak at high schools and I talk to these teens and you can see the pain in their eyes. Like what I see most now is that these teens are suffering from depression and they have nobody to talk to. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to try anything just to not feel the way that they're feeling. And that's scary because you don't know what's out there. The one high school I spoke at, the girl was just coming back from in the hospital. She was 15 years old from an overdose. At 15, like, I didn't even know what drugs were. You know? And it's just, I don't know. I don't have a solution. It's scary. It's so scary. And
it's hard, too, because they don't have the, I don't know if I shouldn't speak for all of them, but for me, I didn't have the tools to deal with life, to deal with feelings, you know?
No, I didn't either. And I don't know. And then you see, like, things where kids eat Tide Pods and, you know, then choke each other till they can't breathe. And it's like, well, you get a handle on one, and then 5 more pop up. And then you maybe get a handle on that, and then 6 more pop up. And it's like, does it ever end? And, I mean, we don't stop, but it's just, I don't know. Things just seemed a lot simpler when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Is it hard to share your personal story to, like, the public and to share your story to the high schools?
It's not. It's not, because when I was out there using, everybody knew I was a heroin addict. There was a point where, like, it was known. I was in and out of jail. My father had a good name, and I ran his name through the mud. You know, we came from a good family, and I had no problem letting everybody know that I was this horrible person that would literally slit your throat for a bag of heroin. So to be out there and sharing my story now, hold nothing back. There's one part of my story that I won't share, and I don't think I ever will. Mm-hmm. It led me to a place darker than hell, but for most of it, I have no problem letting people know, because there's always somebody, A, who's done worse, mm-hmm. and B, that somebody can relate to. And the last high school I shared at, I was teetering on the fence about sharing about my abortion. And it was like, well, there's some really young females in here. I don't know if I should share. And, like, finally at the last minute, I just blurted it out, and I touched upon it. And the very last girl I spoke to, not to talk to me, she's like, you know, I just had an abortion 6 weeks ago, and I have been struggling so much with this. And she's like, seeing somebody come in here who has turned their life around and is successful and has gotten past the pain. She's like, to be honest with you, I wanted to relapse. And she was also in recovery at 17. She's like, I wanted to relapse and to use. And she's like, this just gave me hope. Mm. So it's like, I could be selfish and keep my stuff inside, but what's the point? You know, I'm not ashamed of it, because it made me who I am, you know, and it's not about me. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for recognition. Like, literally, I've listened to everybody's story that has helped me get where I'm at. And, like, I picked in pieces of everybody's story that made me stronger. And I feel like maybe if somebody gets something out of my past, then my mistakes were worth it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's kind of like that saying, our secrets keep us sick. Doesn't do us any good anyways.
Right. That's how I feel.
Are you still modeling?
I retired. So I don't know if I'll do a comeback shoot at some point, but after the last shoot, which made Playboy International, which was huge, and they actually published my story on addiction, which they were one of the first international stories to be done on addiction, was mine, which was really big. Yeah. And, you know, when Hugh Hefner died and his daughter took over the magazine, they changed their whole entire way that they marketed Playboy, and they don't do nudes anymore. They turn more into like a Maxim magazine, and they actually, believe it or not, publish content. And I was on the fence about whether or not I wanted to go, because you hear Playboy and you think nude and you think like there's a stigma against Playboy. And I'm like, well, I want to be speaking to high schools, and I don't really know if that's going to, you know, represent myself well, because if a mom hears, you know, oh, Playboy, they're going to think something. And I'm like, that's not the case. So I really thought about it for a long time, and I was between this and another magazine. And I'm like, you know what, like, I worked really hard for those pictures, and they're very classy and they're well done. And the photographer out in Los Angeles is one of the most reputable I've ever worked with. And I said, you know what, like, Playboy followings, they're behind my story. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to go for it. So the magazine got released June 1st. And so far it was the best decision I've ever made, because there have been more behind my decision than any man. And it's because you're showing women that you could do anything with your dreams and stand up for who you are. You don't have to take your clothes off. You could do everything with class and integrity. You know, stand up for who you are and your decisions. And, you know, it was the best decision I have made so far, was sticking to that. So I actually retired going out on that. And in 3 years, I made Vogue. I did that. I've been on 2 magazines.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did a lot in the 3 years I've been sober. But it's also very brutal in terms of, you know, and your workout regimen, and coming off 15 years of killing my body with drugs and alcohol. You know, I kind of want to live and enjoy life a little bit. I'll compete again. I also do bodybuilding, and I did my first show last year, which was awesome. But I'll definitely do that again next year. But for now, I kind of just want to do it at my own pace and not be under such a strict regimen. So for now, I'm retired.
Yeah. How do people find you on Facebook, or do you have a website? I
do. So my website is www.fallrisebelieve. And that's kind of what I market everything under. And it's FALLRISEBELIEVE. And it just means that you could fall down off anything, and you could rise up from the ashes if you just believe in yourself. And that's what my believe. That's what my modeling, my motivational speaking and modeling Facebook page is under. You could find me on Facebook under Alexis Johnson. I do a lot of live streams. I'm also a published poet, so I do write poetry. I am writing the book. Like I said, that's supposed to be published and for sale in October. We're just wrapping that up now. I'm almost done writing it.
And what was the name of the book again?
Beautiful Nightmare.
Oh, okay.
And it's been pretty busy. You know, I collaborate with a lot of strong people in recovery. I have a lot of great friends. I keep my circle small, but they're amazing, like Tim Ryan and Jan Alker and Higgy and all these people that, you know, stay true and are in it for the right reasons. I learned that the first time is that with the 2.5 years I had, I was still friends with all of my old friends. You know, I still had those reservations back there somewhere. I had all the old drug dealers in my phone, and I had them on Facebook. And so when I relapsed, it was very easy for me to just make that phone call because I knew who to call. You know, when I came out to Harrisburg, I restarted everything, changed my phone number, my email, deleted my old Facebook, like everything I changed because I wanted a different life. And for me, I had to remove myself from where I was completely. Like, I disappeared for a year when I came to the Salvation Army. And for me, that's what worked. I was that hardcore. I just had to remove myself from society for a while.
Mm-hmm. What an incredible comeback story you have. And, you know, Alexis, you're just so amazing, and I'm just happy for you. And I don't know, I really loved your story, and I could relate to a lot of it. It hits home for me. So
thank you.
I really appreciate you being on here today and sharing your story. And, you know, thanks for making a difference and sharing your story to that younger generation that needs to hear it.
Holly, thank you. I'd love to hear your story sometime. And, you know, if anybody ever has any questions or just anything, like, I always have my phone on me and I'm always around. And, you know, even if they just need to be told how awesome they are, because they are. You know, somebody always told me God doesn't make junk. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to realize that, because I always wanted to hold on to the baggage of my past. And if anybody listens to this and leaves with one thing today, like, just believe in yourself enough to know that you are worth everything good in this life.
Absolutely. That's such a good reminder. I need to, like, remind myself that, like, on a daily basis, even if I don't want to believe it. You know, so
it's hard.
Yes, it is. Well, Alexis, let's stay in touch, okay?
I would like that, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great Sunday.
Of course. Thanks, Alexis. You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Wow, what an incredible story of hope. She just inspires me to do and be the best that I can be and have goals. Because now that we're in recovery and today we're clean and we have a future and we have goals, it's so cool that we can achieve those goals too. And listening to her story just gives me so much inspiration, and especially empowering women. I love seeing women succeed. I love women staying in sobriety and in recovery and doing things that they dream of doing. For me, I didn't have dreams before. Now that I have dreams and goals and aspirations, I can achieve those thanks to recovery and thanks to you, because together we can. And then for my daily reading I have today, this is out of the book, Each Day a New Beginning. Though we can be sick and tired and faint and worn, though all things can be borne, what bothered us most a year ago, a month ago, even a week ago? Probably whatever it was, we were obsessed with it, certain that our futures were ruined, that there was no reasonable solution. It's also probable that we feared we simply could not survive the complexity of the situation. But we did, and we always will be able to survive any and all difficulties. We are never, absolutely never, given more than we can handle. In fact, we are given exactly what we need at any given time. We have many lessons to learn. Fortunately, we have the structure of the 12 steps to guide us through the lessons. We need mainly to remember what we are powerless over, that there is a power greater than ourselves, and that life will become simple. We'll need no extra homework when we turned it over to the care of God. Whatever my problem is today, I will let God have it. A solution is in the making. I'll see it just as quickly as I can let go of the problem. And my joke or my one-liner of the day is, a boy asks his grandmother, "Granny, have you seen a bottle of pills? It says LSD on the bottle." The grandmother replies, "To the hell with the pills. Have you seen the dragon in the kitchen?" We don't want Granny on LSD, okay? Well, thanks for listening to Recovery Talk Podcast. We'll have a new episode out next month. It'll be the first day of every month. We're still doing one episode a month. And if you could follow us on Facebook to find any updates, or just follow our page and kind of see what's going on, or if you want to be a guest on the show, would love to hear your story. Thanks again.